Hello everybody, it's Sarah, and once again it's been a few weeks since I uploaded. I don't know, ever since I started BookTube back up, I'm kind of just struggling a bit maintaining a regular uploading schedule. Which also means there's a few reviews that I haven't filmed yet. But that's not why we're here right now. Right now we're here to talk about my July reading wrap-up. How many books did I read? How did I do? I will leave stats out of it going forward, to be honest, right now. I'm not vibing with doing stats. But yeah, I read a total of 11 books. And so let's talk about which books I read, and let's start talking about the books that I didn't read physically because I tend to forget those. And I read from the second to the fourth novella in the Murderbot Diaries, which are, I will pull up Storygraph for that one. It's Artificial Condition, Rogue Protocol, and Exit Strategy, I think. I read all of these three as audiobook, and I can actually really recommend the audiobook. They're like around a 3.5 star for me, all 3.75 stars. I know that the Murderbot Diaries is very, very adored and loved by a lot of people. However, as someone who is not a very character-focused reader, and for whom it happens very rarely that I completely latch onto a character, the Murderbot Diaries isn't really like an oh my god, I absolutely love and adore this, I love Murderbot so much type of series, because it just, yeah, he's a neat character. I don't personally care about Murderbot. But for those of you who don't know, the Murderbot Diaries is a series of novellas. I believe there's like 1 or 2 novels out so far. And also, each of the novella has gotten longer as the series has progressed. And we follow Murderbot, who is a security unit within this world. Murderbot is like not quite a robot, not quite an augmented human. It's like a robot with augmented human parts, looking mostly humanoid, looking like a human, but being very much robotic. And Murderbot has hacked its own security panel thing that kind of makes sure that it follows directions, and now is on the loose, quote unquote, except Murderbot really just wants to watch serials, but also gets, you know, connected to a bunch of stuff, and a bunch of stuff happens. Like the plot kind of thickens as the series goes on. But yeah, I enjoyed the audiobook, I enjoyed the series. I read the first one, I think like 2 or 3 years ago by now. It's fun. For me personally, that's as far as it goes. I don't even feel the need, like I don't own any of the Murderbot books. I don't really feel the need to get them also. I'm having fun. I'm gonna continue on, finish the series, although I think it's not done yet, the series, but I'm gonna continue on with the series, and that's pretty much it. So, now that we have that out of the way, I actually, like, in terms of series continuations, I did really good this month. But first, let's do my read the world stuff. For that, I actually read 2 books in July, because I read the one that I had intended to read for June also, which didn't arrive in time, and then I also read another one. First, I read Celestial Bodies, but in German, by Choka Alharti, which is or was the winner of the International Booker Prize. This is an Omani author. It is also the first, I don't know if it's the first Omani author or the first female Omani author to be translated from Arabic into English. I don't know if it's translated generally. I think specifically English. And this one is kind of a generational type story. So in the back it says we follow mainly 3 sisters who live in this one Omani village, and it kind of centers around them, which is kind of true. but also not really, because we also follow some generations previously, like primarily one generation previously, and then we also follow one of the husbands of the sisters, who is actually the only POV that we get in first person perspective. Aside from that, most of the other POVs we get one chapter from, and as we get chapter after chapter and POV after POV, kind of a bigger picture of this village and of the life within this village in Oman just kind of starts forming over a couple of decades. This was originally written, I think, in the 90s, originally published. No, 2009. It was published 2009. It's now been translated and it won the International Booker, and I enjoyed it. I think I gave it 4 stars. However, overall, personally, it's one of those books that I find really interesting because you also find out a lot of the context. However, at the same time, a lot of these books, a lot of these generational stories or stories following a couple of women within a specific context also read very similarly to me, because personally I often don't know enough to really filter out the cultural nuances between those different books. But overall, I really enjoyed it. Also, it was really nice because I was, like, before I read this, I was in Provence in France. For those of you who don't know, Provence is the space in France where you get all the lavender fields. And so I took some lavender with me, and I also had this book with me. Didn't get to read it in France, but I stored my lavender in the book, and so whenever I open this book, I just get a waft of lavender smell, which is really nice. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I think it's a good recommendation, especially if, you know, if you're into these types of books, which I sometimes am, I sometimes am not. But I don't think it's the type of book that will stay with me for very long. I feel like I'm sounding really negative this video, even though I gave this 4 stars. Like, I enjoyed it. So the other Read Around the World book I read was a very short book, and that is La Bastarda by Trifonia Melibea Obono. This was translated from Spanish, and this is an author from Equatorial Guinea, and Equatorial Guinea, just like a lot of other African countries, has this thing where there's a lot of different ethnic groups within the national space of this country, because, you know, colonialism and the country's kind of, you know, the way how they got their start is European powers just like drawing lines. And specifically, this book deals with the background from the author, which is the Fang culture. It's about Okomo, who is orphaned. Her mother has died, and she does not know who her father is because he wasn't married to her mother, and so within this specific culture, she is a bastard. And so it's about her trying to figure out who her father is, also her connection to her uncle, who is gay, and her figuring out that she is lesbian, and what all of that means within her specific cultural context. I really, really enjoyed this book. There's parts of it that are a bit harder to read, especially when it comes to the other sapphic characters within the book, who partially have histories or like are subjects of sexual violence also. So yeah, but I still can really recommend this. I gave it, I think, 4.5 stars, I don't know. Really enjoyed it. It's a very quick read. It's barely 100 pages. I think it's 103 pages. And the thing that I really enjoyed also about this one specifically, this edition, I don't know if other editions have this as well, is it has an afterword going into some of the cultural contexts and explaining them more closely, which actually this one also had, the German edition, although less on the cultural context and more there's like notes on translating this novel. So yeah, but very happy with getting 2 more countries done on my read around the world list. So next, let's continue on with more series that I continue on with. For those of you who haven't watched my June TBR, I am trying currently to read at least 2 books a month that either finish a series or are in continuation of a series. And this month I did very well because I read in total 6 books that continued on with series. However, I also started 3 books that are firsts in series that, however, don't have second books out so far, so I feel like it counts only halfway. I don't know. But first, of course, was Murderbot, where I read 3 books, and then I read 2 books in another series, and that is The Wars of Light and Shadow by Jenny Wirtz. I read book 2, The Ships of Maria, and book 3, War Host of Vastmark. This series is like slowly growing on me because the main character Arathon is very much growing on me. The setup is that it's about this war between those 2 brothers, and also like we get that told at the very like prologue introduction bit in the first book. Also that the history on the war between those 2 brothers, one who has the powers of shadow, one who has the powers of light. The one who has the shadow, of course, is the one who has been vilified by history, but that might not be quite true. And then we start in the first book by getting to know those 2 brothers, how they are connected to each other, because actually one is like the bastard son of the mother of the other one, so they are half brothers. And they... shit happens right off the bat that has nothing much to do with the rest of the series. They jump through a portal and they are now in a country where there's a prophecy about the 2 of them, because this country for centuries has been under the sway of this mist wraith that has kept the country under a perpetual cloud cover or darkness, whatever. There hasn't been the sun, and only the 2 of them can defeat it. And so it follows the 2 of them first as they defeat or try to defeat the mist wraith, and then shit happens and the 2 of them kind of start fighting against each other. And so it's just very amusing because you just see Arathon, who wants nothing more than just to be left alone because he wants to be a fucking bard, but shit constantly happens which gets misconstrued, and he ends up being the evil guy constantly. And so I read book 2 and book 3. I think I enjoyed book 3 the most so far, but yeah, I just love Arathon. It's written in a very interesting way because you get POVs from all characters. However, this is an older fantasy series, it's from the 90s, so it has this thing that a lot of older fantasy series have, where it's almost told at arm's length, so it's not as character focused as other series, and it's very plot heavy. There's a lot of plot happening that a lot of time you're asking yourself, could we just like jump past it? But I'm really enjoying them. I have so far given all of them 3.75 stars, and yeah, just having a good time with them. Continuing on with the next one whenever I get the next book. I still have to order it, but yeah, definitely can recommend this series, especially if you're into classic fantasy. The other series that I continued on with was Paladin's Strength by T. Kingfisher, which is the second book in the Saints of Steel. The Saints of Steel is a quartet of 4 books following the Saints of Steel. They are paladins of a dead god who, once they realized that the god died, went completely berserker and are still more or less at a risk of going berserker constantly. And we follow, in each book we follow a different one of them as they try to kind of find their footing again. However, it's mainly like each book is also very much a romance story, so we follow each of them as they fall in love with someone else. The first book was with a perfumer. We also get POVs of the love interests constantly. This one is, she's not a nun, she's a lay sister, who has been kidnapped together with her other nuns from a convent. And so after she escapes, she meets the paladins on the road, and they help her trying to get the freedom back and everything. And then the next one, I don't know what it's gonna be about, but I know the next one is the one gay one, and then there's one fourth one also. But yeah, I'm enjoying them. T. Kingfisher has a very dry humor, and one dangerous thing with T. Kingfisher is she has a very strong own voice, which can make her books read very samey. So I'm quite happy that I didn't read book 2 right after book 1. I waited 2 months. However, I will still try to read the entire series this year, but it'll probably be until September or October for me to read book 3. Now on to the series that I started this month. The first one was the buddy read for my book club of Queens, Witches and Valkyries, which, as all of you probably already know, is all about reading adult fantasy written by women and genderqueer folks, and sometimes we also read sci-fi. And for July we read A Song of Legends Lost by M.H. Ayinda. This one, sadly, I enjoyed less than pretty much anyone else who has read the book this month. I still gave it 3 stars. I at points was about to give it 2.5 stars, but like there were some chapters at the end that kind of somewhat pulled it around for me and made me want to pick up book 2 also. But this one is a pretty expansive epic fantasy set in a world that is very much also like futuristic vibes. There's these beings, well, there's something called tech work, and also there's these beings that seem to partially be made up of tech work. And these beings have for a very long time now fought and threatened this empire. And we follow a lot of different characters, mostly kind of scions of this empire, as they fight the Ghost Bloods, I think it's called, or something. I don't know. Something like that. Grey Bloods? Grey Bloods. Maybe that. Yeah, I really enjoyed the world building. I once again had the problem that I'm not a character-focused reader. And this book, for a first book, just had too many POVs for me, and those POVs for me were not sufficiently connected throughout most of the book. Like, it was clear that they looked at different aspects of very similar problems or of the same problem. However, they still felt very oddly disjointed, which is why this book in a lot of parts fell flat for me, especially again because I couldn't connect to the characters. I didn't care about the characters. I'm sorry. That's really my main issue. That was my main issue, which then made the other issue of that it felt like it should have had some more work at the conceptual stage worse. So yeah, I ended up giving it 3 stars, as I said. I'm probably gonna read the next book, and I'm happy that I have another first book in an Illumicrate series where I won't feel the need to buy the next book. Then I read The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig. This is another one about like a kind of nun. It's about Sybil, who grew up in a convent as a diviner. She and her other diviners are called on to divine for people in this convent, in this big fat abbey place in this kingdom. And one day the king comes and wants a divination, and she gives him a divination with a bunch of like really bad omens. And also there's a knight who seems to be really annoying. At the same time, just after the king and the knight leave again, Sybil's sisters start vanishing. And so she goes, finds the knight, finds the king, asks them for help to find her sisters, but the king wants something in return. I enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars, I think. It's not as memorable to me as the Shepherd King series. Then again, like, I didn't enjoy it as much as the first book, as One Dark Window. But then again, also, with the Shepherd King, I only started loving that duology with book 2. Like, the first book, I enjoyed slightly more than this one. However, I also think I only gave it 4 or 4.25 stars. This one, I also gave 4 stars, I think. So, yeah. I'm gonna be continuing on with the series whenever the next book comes out, and Rachel Gillick just generally has a really neat writing style to read, so they tend to be very fast reads for me. And then lastly, I have my probably favorite book of the month, which is The Mercy Makers by Tessa Gratton. This is, for some reason, it says here, the start of a decadent romantic epic fantasy trilogy. This is not romantic fantasy. There's barely romance in here. There's some sex in here. Maybe a lot of sex. But our main character literally falls in love with anyone. Anyway, this is very interesting because there's this very specific magic system, and we follow our main character, who is the daughter of like this criminal boss within the city. And at the very beginning of the story, and she's not just his daughter, but she is also his best, like, magician. It's called architect in here, but, you know, magic wielder who helps him a lot, and who is rumored to be doing, like, forbidden magic stuff, which she might or might not actually be doing. However, her identity as this, like, second-hand helper to her father is secret, and so when her father is not betrayed, but is imprisoned by the crown, and like a lot of his organization is imprisoned, she's also imprisoned. She's just imprisoned as her father's daughter, not as this secret magician thing, whatever. And as a prisoner, she very quickly finds her way into the confidence of, like, the emperor's sister. It's not called an emperor, but, you know, I'm just using the going terms instead of the specific terms right now. And she kind of gets caught up in court intrigue. Meanwhile, as all of this is going on, the empire is more and more in an uproar. There's rebellions that need to be knocked down and everything. And yeah, there's just, like, very interesting dynamics in this book. I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4.5 stars. I really enjoy Tessa Gratton's writing. Also how different their writing and their storytelling is from, like, each type of book that I've read so far from her. But yes, I will try to film a review for this, so I will leave it at that, which was very confusing, but really enjoyed it. So, and that was pretty much it for my wrap-up. I don't really know yet which series I'm gonna continue on. I actually already finished the series in August, but what the second series is that I'm gonna be continuing on in August, I don't really know yet which Read Around the World book I will read, so I will leave all of that. The only thing that I can tell you is that for both my book club of Queen's Witches, as well as the second book club that I now have with Scylla and Steph, we're gonna be reading The Water Outlaws, and for the quarterly crit club we will probably have a live show for that, and I will keep you updated whenever we know when we'll have that. But yeah, with all of that said, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, maybe think about giving me a thumbs up and also maybe subscribing. All the links to my social media, to all the book clubs, to all the discords will be linked down below, so go and check those out, and I hope I'll see you very soon. Bye!